Wonderful. Hi.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, I don't think we have our youth moderator to introduce you, so let me just go ahead and introduce the session. Welcome to World Futures Day Young Voices. This session is brought to you by Teach the Future, a global nonprofit dedicated to embedding futures literacy in education worldwide. World Futures Day is a partnership with the Millennium Project, and right now we are all part of a 24-hour global conversation about our futures, creating a space where all generations, especially young voices, can share their visions, concerns, and action-driven projects towards a better tomorrow. Let's make this conversation count. Facilitators, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Amna. Wonderful.
Oh, well,
Um,
let's get started.
hmm?
Welcome. This is World Futures Day Young Voices, as was just said. And today we're going to talk about biogenic materials for the 22nd century. My name is Lilly Polack. I go by she, her pronouns. And I'll let Tyler.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tyler Tigerino. I go with he, him pronouns.
And I'm Sarah Dawn Haynes. I use she, hers. And I think also it looks like we have two participants. Do you want to introduce yourselves? Anushka?
Hi, I'm Anushka. I'm a high school student from Florida.
Wonderful. Hi, Rosa.
Hi, good afternoon.
Where are you from?
Oh, I'm from Peru.
Bueno. Ines, hello. Welcome. Let me.
So, should we move forward? We like to start each of our events with a land acknowledgement because we are from Boulder and all work and attend CU Boulder. So, the University of Colorado Boulder, Colorado's flagship university, honors and recognizes the many contributions of Indigenous peoples in our state. CU Boulder acknowledges that it is located on the traditional territories and ancestral homelands of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Ute people, as well as many other Native American nations. Their forced removal from these territories has caused devastating and lasting impacts. And while the University of Colorado Boulder can never undo or rectify the devastation wrought on Indigenous peoples, we do commit to improving and enhancing engagement with Indigenous peoples and issues locally and globally. And we will do this by recognizing and amplifying the voices of Indigenous CU Boulder staff and students, faculty, and also their work, educating, conducting research, supporting student success, and integrating Indigenous knowledge, consulting, engaging, and working collaboratively with tribal nations to enhance our ability to provide access and culturally sensitive support and to recruit, retain, and graduate Native American students in a climate that is inclusive and respectful.
Thanks, Lily. I want to add a virtual materiality acknowledgement. When we acknowledge that this workshop is taking place through the connected devices and infrastructures of the internet, which is a material network that is built through natural resource mining and global labor exploitation. It depends on vast and constant energy consumption, generates greenhouse gases that cause climate change, and produces e-waste that is part of a global chain of imperialism and inequality.
Thank you. So we'll kick this meeting off with our meeting or webinar off with just an agenda of what we'll be talking about for this brief 45 or so minutes that we have you all. We've just finished our introductions, but you may all be wondering why we have picked this topic of biogenic materials. So we're seeing these three images on the left, and they may look very familiar because we're seeing a lot more of them in our daily lives and in like the media. So biogenic materials are something that we have found that can help address these issues of pollution, waste, and emissions in general. So you'll hear us talking about a lot of maybe words that may be familiar or unfamiliar to you, such as biomimicry, biophilia, or biogenic materials. But don't worry, we'll do some definitions of words. So hopefully everything will be cleared up, and when we're talking, it'll be a little more clear about what we're talking about. Then we'll lead into some examples and inspiration of current biogenic materials and how they're used. And finally, we'll lead off with a design challenge, or challenge or workshop. Challenge sounds kind of scary, but we'll ask all of you guys to share ideas in your lovely brains about how you want to see biogenic materials show up in your daily lives. But with that, I just want to thank you all for taking the time and interest to be here today and being young leaders of the future. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them in the chat, raise your hand. But we'll also have a brief 10-minute or so Q&A session at the end. And with that, let's get this presentation started.
Thanks, Tyler. So there's a designer and Ms. Hoffman who said future studies offer theories and methodologies that can make us feel connected to solutions and to each other. And in doing so, we'll cultivate personal agency, well-being, and resilience. And this slide is showing us that there's many possible futures. And we can go even further and say that there's possible, probable, preposterous. And we're looking through the lens of preferred futures and how we believe different materials will help us reach that. There is this, it's a method, it's a perspective, it's a field of study called biomimicry. And it's learning from and then emulating natural forms, processes, and ecosystems to create more sustainable designs. Biomimicry ushers in an era based not on what we can extract from nature, but on what we can learn from her. For designers, architects, engineers, and innovators of all stripes, the answer to the question, what would nature do, is not one idea, but millions of ideas. Using 3.85 billion years of nature's evolution helps us see new innovations. Nature is our mentor, and through creating conditions conducive to life is not optional if we want to be on the planet. It's a rite of passage for any organism that manages to fit on the planet over long periods of time. And in this, you can see there's the, biology, and there's life, nature, technology, design, and innovation, and trying to bring all of these facets together. Biomimicry uses a set of principles expressed by life that explains its ability to survive on Earth. Everything that's here survived ice ages, tsunamis, volcanoes, asteroids, hurricanes, and that is a lot of testing and rigorous selection that's resulted in 99.9% failure rate. Only 0.1% of species that have ever lived on Earth survive today. The 30 million species that do exist on Earth show us sustainable designs. What life principles stands out to you? I don't know if anybody wants to put it in the chat or share. And I always get really excited about the use life-friendly chemistry. Tyler and Lilly are thinking about being resourceful with material and energy. Does anybody else see one that they've thought about or are interested in? I can't see the chat, so if anybody says it in there, I'm going to ask my co-presenters to help manage that. So is there anybody who isn't familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals? you can always raise your hand. They are a United Nations framework for how we want the world to look in 2030. That these are guiding us just as the life's principles from biomimicry guide us. And I think that there's a lot of commonality in things that you can see in both. They're both great frameworks for any design or business or engineer. And in today's session, we're going to be talking about how materiality will, help us with affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, design, innovation, and infrastructure, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, and of course, climate action, life below water, and life on land. So you can see there's a lot of opportunity. There's a question of how do you do biomimicry? And it's a practice that embodies three interconnected but unique ingredients. The three essential elements of biomimicry represent the foundation of combining essential elements together. Those elements start with ethos, and it forms the essence of our ethics and our respect for nature, our intentions and our underlying philosophy for why we practice biomimicry. Ethos represents our respect for, responsibility to, and gratitude for fellow species and our home. The reconnect element reinforces the understanding that while seemingly separate, people and nature are actually deeply intertwined because we are nature. Reconnecting is a practice and a mindset that explores and deepens this relationship between humans and the rest of nature. Can everyone think of a peaceful place? Where is it? Most of us tend to pick a place in nature. And that's why we look to emulate. Emulate brings principles, patterns, strategies, and functions found in nature to inform design. Emulation is about being proactive and achieving the vision of humans fitting sustainably on Earth. And I want to note that it doesn't translate easily in other languages. And what it means is to bring the principles, patterns, strategies, and functions found in nature to inform design. This is also the hardest part of doing biomimicry because we have so much to learn about biology. For example, spider silk is roughly 5 times stronger than steel by weight, but it's difficult to make synthetic large quantities. There is research on using it as a component for artificial tendons and guides to grow nerves, and I think we'll see it used in textiles and materials as the years go on and we learn more. Here is a way to think through how we use biomimicry. We scope a problem, like for us, we've chosen materials. We analyze the facts, set goals, and set a vision for the project. Then we move to discover, and we look for inspiration and ideas from biology, which Lilly and Tyler have gathered for you already. We search what strategies and mechanisms from organisms, their processes and systems and patterns that help meet the challenge. If we were doing this in person, we'd have magazines, internet sites, or other designers' work to look at. And then we create. How can we put together ideas in a new way? Making, inventing, and experimenting, we can sketch, make prototypes or samples, which we're going to attempt to do here together. And then we evaluate the appropriateness and viability of the design, reflecting on original intentions and goals. What are the gaps, equity, or safety concerns? Evaluating is where we return to the life's principles that we looked at, and we measure in the design against them. And we might ask, what wouldn't nature do in this design? I have a brief example for you. And it comes from Interface Floor Company. They are the world's largest manufacturer of commercial carpets. And in 1994, they wanted to overhaul their company to achieve 100% sustainability by 2020. And they turned to biomimicry to achieve the goal. They used life's principles and asked, how would nature design a floor? Forest floors have a cohesive design, even though there are different elements. We see organized chaos, but the elements still look comfortable sitting next to another, regardless of color or direction of the elements. In the creation and evaluation stage, they found that it reduced waste and installation errors by using these same forms and patterns. The dye and the direction of weaves just weren't important, but they hadn't yet found in manufacturing ways of emulating nature without using harmful dyes and materials and glues. So they had to go back to evaluation and scoping and found out how to use small adhesive stickers instead of glue. And that was inspired by geckos and gravity, which holds all things down. And they acquired and manufactured tiles more sustainably through this process. They aren't perfect, but they do have innovations. And in the last few years, they've been using retired fishing nets from island nations that get woven into carpet material. And now carpet tiles are the norm in our university and across many places. Look for them when next time you go to a big institution building. So, biomimicry is a method and process for us to use nature as mentor and model. Throughout, we ask why a lot, and we explore how nature has solved the problems we're trying to solve through form, function, and process. There is something that's similar. It's called biophilia, and this is the practice of connecting people to nature to improve health and well-being. So like the floor example, because we evolved being outside, when our floor's patterns echoes what our species evolved with, it's helpful for our nervous system. We feel calmer and more at home. People are happier and prefer working and living under natural lighting than fluorescent lighting. Biophilia uses colors, shapes, natural light, and bring nature into our built environments and spaces. Whereas biomimicry helps us make things that are inspired by nature's wisdom. And Lilly is going to give you more examples of that.
Just before, we had some comments in the chat talking about the life's principles, and some said that they like to be locally attuned and responsive. And we have another comment on life-friendly chemistry, which I think are some pretty good ones, if I could say so myself. As Sarah Dawne just talked about, biomimicry and biophilia show us how looking to nature can improve the way we live and even interact with our natural surroundings. But biogenic materials takes that one step further. But what are biogenic materials? They are natural or reused materials derived from the earth around us, things like wood, plants, or fungi that can be used directly or shaped with new technologies, even today, to create more sustainable products in buildings. Unlike traditional construction materials that we often see, like concrete and steel, which uses a lot of energy just to extract, produce, and even transport to construction sites, biogenic materials often store carbon. They grow and require much less energy to produce, and they help reduce greenhouse gases, which we see being produced in abundance with the traditional construction materials that I kind of listed beforehand. In addition, they also make spaces healthier and less toxic. They make us want to be there and sit and enjoy the nature around us, similar to biophilia. And they allow designers like myself and you guys and future thinkers to create functional and sustainable buildings that make the future a better place. And so for the slideshow, to kind of help break that down a little bit more and make it a little bit more digestible, we've broken those biogenic materials into 3 distinct categories. And those categories are grown, reused, and also invented. And so we hope that with these categories and the rest of this slideshow, that as we talk, we can give you kind of a glimpse into the future of sustainable materials and how you, as a future designer and thinker, can work with nature in smarter and healthier ways. And so I'll give it up to Tyler.
Thank you, Lily. So like Lily was just talking about, we've identified possibly these three categories, but really these biogenic materials can play a role in many different categories, and this is just how we like to think of them. So first category that we're going to cover is grown biogenic materials, and these are materials that are grown out of the earth. So we're thinking of cork, mycelium, coffee husks, hempcrete, bamboo, and straw bale, just as a few examples of grown biogenic materials to help you guys and guide your thinking in grown biogenic materials. So yeah, with that, next slide, please. So one that we're going to highlight, and just for the sake of time, we can only do highlight one of them. I wish we could do all of them, but mycelium is a mushroom product. Think of, just in general, like mushrooms that you can eat or fungi. And they are grown using fungal spores and waste products such as straw bale, coffee grounds, and they're grown with a molds to create a material that can be used in a lot of different creative ways that we'll touch on in a little bit. Mycelium is non-toxic, low energy, and can be used for things such as packaging, um, products, building constructions, and even clothes. So yeah, Lily.
One specific or fascinating example to me personally that I did upon my research of grown biogenic materials is this mycelium dress, designed by Amelia Hoytnick, a Dutch designer for her project Mycotex. Instead of making fabric in the usual way, by sewing it or weaving it in front of really big machines, she actually grows this textile using mycelium, what Tyler just talked about, as kind of the root network of mushrooms or fungi. And she does this by mixing fungal spores of mycelium with different types of fiber, pretty similar to what you're seeing on the right bottom side of the screen. So things like cotton or even sawdust. And what she does is she places the mycelium and that fiber into a mold. And as it grows, the mycelium binds the material together into flexible panels, similar to the photo on the top right, that you don't need to cut or you don't need to sew. And so those panels are arranged directly onto a 3D model, nothing 2D like we often see in the textile industry. So the sleeves can be long, they can be short, this waist can go in if you would like. It's all kind of flexible with that mycelium material. But also, it comes on, it only uses as much material as needed. You don't have excess fabrics coming out of this. You grow as much as you need to put on this dress, which eliminates a lot of waste that we also see being a big issue in the textile industry. And another cool fun fact is that the fabric is 100% biodegradable, and it doesn't require like harmful chemicals to preserve the different fabrics or even pesticides. And it doesn't use that large amount of water and energy that we see in the textile industry today because it is biogrown. So Hoytnick, when she did eventually present this to the Dutch Sustainable Fashion Week, wanted to show how textiles can be grown, shaped, and repaired rather than cut and discarded and in our waste units all around the world, pointing towards how we can create a more sustainable, waste-free future in fashion by just using grown biogenic materials.
moving on to our second, like quote unquote, buckets for these biogenic materials. We often maybe think of them as things that are natural or grown, like we've previously seen, but possibly the most sustainable or interesting biogenic materials to me, at least personally, are these reused ones that they're not just natural. They can have, biogenic materials don't just have to be like something natural and grown. They can be reused that we already have, such as plastic bricks, like reclaimed wood from our buildings, recycled glass, recycled rubber, and even like recycled textiles, like recycled denim insulation. Um, these are really important because the most sustainable thing and helpful thing for our planet can be to reuse materials that we already have in excess of a lot of the times. So thinking about how to reuse a lot of the plastic that we already have, or a lot of the concrete or glass or rubber that we have just so much of. And this means that we don't have to produce and ship new materials. So yeah, moving on, please. So we'll just cover quickly one of them, reclaimed wood, which can be one of the most, common ones that we could see or use in the future. So reclaiming wood can serve to promote sustainability by reusing a lot of wood that would have otherwise gone to waste in a landfill and just started decomposing and releasing methane into the atmosphere. So this also serves to reduce the need for sourcing more wood, cutting down, deforesting, and shipping that material. So it reduces the need for what we call virgin timber, or just wood that has never been used before, and helps fight impacts related to material sourcing and just help fight climate change and just save our planet. So, yes.
And before I introduce one of our next examples, I do want to ask, has anybody ever been into a really cool old building before? Like, I know where I live personally in Boston, Massachusetts, we have some houses from like 1792, or not 1792, but 1892. If you have, you should share in the chat. And on that other note, I have also been into some places like my apartment now that isn't constructed very well, using a lot of new materials. And I don't know if it's ever gonna get to that time frame of my old houses back in Massachusetts, which I mentioned this all in guest preparation for this case study, because I think that's the beauty of this specific case study, is that it can kind of be moved around and placed around. Urban Bloom is a great example of reused biogenic materials in urban design, something that you can see lasting for thousands of years. This project was created and designed by Mini and Urban Matters in Shanghai, and it transformed what once was a very dense parking lot with high-rise apartments and older lane houses right next to it into a temporary public garden made out of pallets. So they used reclaimed wood pallets, normally discarded after shipping, and turned them into modular planters, as well as flexible seating for people in Shanghai. And so by doing this, they reduced waste and also avoided cutting new trees to create benches. They were able to create almost an exhibit. And showing how these natural materials that already existed could be repurposed and have essentially a new life in a new city. Because obviously the ground space was limited since it was a parking lot. They had to get creative here and there. And one of my favorite call outs is kind of the inflatable structures to lift the plants on the top. They wanted to bring in the plants and greenery into the natural environment, which is very similar to biophilia, which is what Sarah Dawn talked about. And so they had those. And it became kind of an immersive experience for many of the people living there and also tourists. Urban Bloom truly shows how designers can rethink urban spaces and large scale design by using reused biogenic materials and creating even these temporary, sustainable, and kind of adaptable solutions that people really enjoy. So something like this, it might be temporary here, but it can go somewhere else. It can go into your own local city to make it more green and more connected to nature. So. Yeah.
And for our final category, of biogenic materials, we have invented. So invented materials are emerging or possibly already here products that try to tackle problems that regular grown or reused biogenic materials might struggle with addressing. So here we have some examples of bioconcrete, carbon absorbing concrete, transparent wood, aerogel insulations, and one that will actually dive a little bit deeper into 3D printed earth on the next slide. These are, oh yeah, okay. So thank you. 3D printed earth is one of the ones that we've decided to highlight for this presentation. It is often locally sourced using clay or soil found like nearby or like on site, and uses organic binding agents such as cellulose, which is just like sugar, so not regular binding agents that are typical that we see in buildings, like adhesives, and they're just a little worse for the environment. So what we're seeing here is sort of like these 3D printing structures. This image on the top right is like 3D printing like this home. So these 3D printed earth can be used to create natural, sustainable, biodegradable, and like low carbon structures. And they can often integrate things like flax seeds for insulation, and yeah, we'll get a little bit more into that in our next slide. Case.
As Tyler just mentioned, those cool building structures on the top are actually part of a project called Tekla. If you want to, I would love to hear your opinion in the chat on whether or not you think they're pretty cool or they look strange, or what your initial thoughts are as I continue to talk about them. Uh, Tekla shows how biogenic materials and advanced technology can kind of collab to create a pretty cool 60 square meter house, as we are seeing here. It was designed by Mario Cucinelli Architects in Italy. And it's one of the first homes that has ever been made that is entirely 3D printed using the earth from the local site. So with these 3D printed homes, you often see there being kind of a little lake because they'll dig up the earth, they'll have clay and soil, kind of will create a clay and soil mixture, and then they will use a robotic additive manufacturing, which is a really big word, but it's kind of that big white crane that you might have saw previously on Tyler's slide. And what that crane does is it goes around in layers and kind of puts down that mixture of soil and clay. And it doesn't just do this in simple lines, it actually does it in kind of a rib structure so that they can add flax or various other forms of natural insulation so that you can actually live in Tekla. This structure is pretty unique because it is 60 square meters. So it does have a kitchen, it does have a gathering place, it even has a roof. It doesn't have a typical roof, but it does have a kind of a skylight coming down to it. But you very well could live in a space like this, living basically with the environment around you. And so with that, we will go into our design challenge. I'll pull up a whiteboard for everybody. to kind of just draw on, and I'll explain it. Oh, I cannot open a whiteboard during screen share. So
do you want to talk about the activity and then I'll close my screen?
yes, that's perfect. So after looking at all of these examples, we want you to start thinking like designers of the future, because you are designers of the future, whether or not you don't think you are. You don't have to be good at sketching to be a designer. So my real question today is, if biogenic materials, the things that we talked about, and biomimicry and biophilia became kind of the dominant materials and concept used in society, our built environment could change dramatically. We might see homes being grown out of biological processes, similar to Tekla that I just mentioned, or we might see living systems starting to be integrated more, like fungi, plants, and soil-based construction. But at the same time, everyday objects like clothing, furniture, packaging, and electronic casings will probably still exist. But what would it look like? How would our homes look if we use biogenic materials? Or how would our objects and products that we use on a daily basis look like if we use those biogenic materials? So our challenge for you today is kind of to envision that in whatever way makes you the most comfortable. So if that's through drawing, go ahead and show what you think your house would look like if you made it out of 3D printed earth, or write how you would feel in that house made out of biogenic materials. And if you would like, you could even source materials off of the internet, just to kind of show how you think how your toothbrush would look if you made it out of these biogenic materials. And we can have this conversation and really see all of your ideas come to life. So we'll open that whiteboard, and right now I will get to it. There's that whiteboard. And just to kind of help you guys, I'm pretty positive you guys can just draw on it. There's drawing features like this. You can drag your mouse in your hand. I'm scribbling. But also, if you press the 3 dots, you can also upload things if you would like from your device. You do have to save the image, and you can add text. And so you guys can kind of just go ham. Maybe let's try to keep design ideas about your home to the left, and then product ideas to the right. And we can kind of just have an open conversation at the end about the brilliant ideas that you guys have. So yeah, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to talk. We love to talk, all 3 of us, or leave it in the chat and we'll answer. So we'll give you some time.
Lily and Tyler, in your environmental design courses, do you have any tips or tricks to help start a design?
Yeah, I think I do. So just for reference, Tyler and I are both environmental design students at CU Boulder. And so we're constantly thinking about materiality and kind of what our future is inevitably going to look like on a bunch of different design scales. I think for me, it's really easy as kind of somebody who loves to sketch to like come up with crazy ideas. And so I always have to remind myself that materiality is a thing. So just recognizing that you should consider materials, you can have those crazy ideas, but then consider materials and where you can implement it. And pulling from case studies has always been pretty helpful for me in the design process. So having things to refer back to like Tekla and knowing that that is something that I can use to design with is pretty helpful. But sometimes it's just about letting my mind run. I've come up with crazy things in my time.
Yeah. Just to add on to what Lily was saying, I believe that, the best way to get started is just to get something or anything down. It doesn't always have to be perfect, or you might not have like the capacities to like perfectly put out what's in like your mind. A lot of the times it's like extremely difficult to do that. So, I guess it's really important just to be able at the end of the day to like explain it. But just know that it doesn't have to be perfect. I cannot really sketch that well either, even though I'm like a design student. And so it's really just about getting something out there and getting your ideas out there just to help you explain it to other people, just because not everyone can get inside that beautiful head of your guys's. So yeah, just get something down. I'm probably gonna write something on like a sticky note or something. So yeah.
We played with this earlier, and for some reason, why can't I figure out where to upload a photo?
It's the three dots, and then you have to press upload. And then it'll say my device, I don't know what Clips is, and then Google Drive. So if you go onto the internet, you find a photo you really like, you save the image, you can upload it. I was just about to try that.
Okay.
It's really good like sketches here. And if these are on with the mouse, that would be really impressive. So, um, yeah, we'll have some time at the end to hopefully hear everyone's ideas and like thoughts. So, just keep working for now. Guess we have about 7 minutes left.
We were talking earlier about algae and scobies, which are, I should have a technical definition of what a SCOBY is. The materials that people can make at home, and we have a student who've made leather out of these plant-based materials, and so it's bacteria. It's symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, and it's consisting of lactic acid bacteria and acetic acid bacteria. It's used to make beverages like kombucha, and beer and wine also undergo fermentation with yeast, but are a little different. And these folks are making all kinds of interesting things out of it. So I imagine there'll be alternatives to using leather as well for our clothes and in our homes. When I was talking about the fishing nets being rewoven into carpets and into maybe the materials on our couches or our kitchen chairs.
I was seeing earlier that there was a hand up from Ethan. I don't know if it was a like a misclick though, but um if you have a question or anything you want to share, Ethan, we'd be happy to hear it.
Okay, I want to talk about my experience about the birds and something to that. And is that I am a bird watcher and I like sometimes nature and all that need to be with nature. So recently, the last year, I participated in the Global Big Day. So my father said, "No, it's not time to get to the place. It's so dangerous." But I do not, I do not give up, and I fight for that. So I win. We get and I get in the official page of Eber or Cornella. that is about birds. So it was a beautiful experience and was happy for me to get in one page. So was a door, an open door for me. I am a bird watcher. This is my binocular. With this, I see different birds. Let me do something. Okay. My binoculars, and with this, I see different birds in my places, and I see black vultures, resplendent quetzal, and was beautiful experience. So I have thank you, and I like it. It was a passion, and it's not was because it is. I can never stop to see birds. It's a passion, and I want to do that always. So I wake up in the morning, I go to observatory that I have a lookout, and I start to take note about birds that I say. So it was beautiful for me. Colors, things, and locomotions or things about birds was beautiful for me. Sometimes I listen sing melodious things about the thrushes, and it's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Um, and I hear you're really passionate about like birds and like bird watching. So if there's any ways that you want to see that show up in like your world, maybe it's something that is like, the observatory is fully made out of I don't know, something like recycled um glass or something along these lines, anything that you can imagine that would maybe serve the birds and like nature better, that would be lovely to write down. And you could also write it down in like whatever language you want. We could definitely always translate, or you can write it down in English, doesn't matter, but we'd love to hear your ideas. Thank you, Ethan, for sharing, by the way.
You're welcome.
Ethan, I also think that's just kind of a very beautiful sentiment, like that that was something that you were so passionate about and enjoy, because half the reason I'm in my major is over just like things I am passionate about and I enjoy. And when I do design things, I always keep those like small things that I love to do. Like yours is bird watching in the back of my head when I'm like designing these different places. I know like one thing for me is I love music. I'm very like I love listening to music all the time. I'm always listening to music to get ideas. And so one of my favorite like things I've ever designed had to do a lot with just with being at a music festival and how like you can experience that and feel more connected in those places. And I feel like that's like I think as Tyler said, it'd be awesome to see like what your ideas are with like bird watching and how we could make that more of like a prominent thing, because I know at least in the US, like most people go out into the nature, but and some people even sit in like um I guess in cities and like feed the pigeons. I lived in New York for a while and they feed the pigeons. And I always thought it'd be kind of cool just to have like an area where you could do that. Like so many, I would see so many people when I always lived in New York doing that. So I always thought to myself, so that'd be really cool. And that's like perfectly defines what we're talking about, how we can reconnect with nature.
When I started to watch, I noticed that nothing in this world can make lonely. always we need to teamwork and work together, and was a beautiful teacher for me. One of my best teachers, one of my favorite was Ian Goddard. Ian Goddard was have a passion with the monkeys and was that. So she was the best people that I remember memories. So for one reason I miss him. Was beautiful when the monkey hugged him in the video. So was beautiful. She teach me that the nature hug, the nature teach, and the nature talk. Beautiful teacher.
I love that. She does, they sound like a very beautiful teacher. They're teaching you that. I guess we can kind of talk about everybody else's designs. If you don't want to talk, feel free, but I think I'm gonna just look at some because I'm being nosy. But I like the plant-like staircase. I had kind of a similar idea of like, could you 3D print a staircase? Because we've 3D printed a building. So I think that would be really interesting and really cool. Or like even just like having plants grow up it would be a really interesting comment. Or I just think thing to see. Um, and then I see somebody hitting biomimicry over here really well.
And I want to say thank you to Alexis for giving me the information about atoms. I've been studying that, and for me, microorganisms is something interesting too. I have passion with astronomy, microorganisms, and birds. So thank you, Alexis, for giving me the information, and I going to study about that materials and microorganisms because something interesting, and always I want a microscope.
Tyler, what are you noticing on the board? I see your little thing going everywhere.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm looking at this just this one on the left side of the homes with this coffee husk in Colombia, but um yeah, I really like that one. Case study, we've looked at a couple of those in our research. And I'm also seeing this like solar panel type, like I don't know what type of house this is, like Hobbit house slash like circle house, which I really enjoy. Um, I don't know. I think that'd be really interesting to live in. And speaking of biomimicry, like solar panels, like we can already see it. I think Alexis was touching on it a little bit on the board. Like we have biomimicry that we can see in real life, not only in like solar panels, which like mimic like photosynthesis that like plants do, but also, in like planes and bullet trains. So um, there's a lot to learn from nature. So yeah, just things to keep on getting interested in, bringing in your passions. Let's take a look at this right side. Yeah. SD, anything to add?
Okay, Ethan, I hope you can see the link I put in the chat for the one of the Olympic buildings that was made after the inspiration of a bird's nest. And where we live, it's really windy, so I always notice the bird's nest that survive, that they're very well constructed. They're built well. We have a lot to learn from birds.
And then on this right side, this products, this like, kind of looks like a rain catcher. If whoever made it wants to speak on it a little bit. I'm gathering that it is, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, but maybe something that collects water and brings them to plants, so they can grow, which I really like. Maybe structure. But yeah, I'm liking a lot of these. And this one at the very bottom of housing. I don't know. Does anyone else want to share their ideas or like what they made? You don't have to be shy. No.
I know we're getting to our time together, and there was a form shared at the beginning, and I put it in the chat. And there's feedback for World Futures Day organizers. And I hope that next year, you and your friends and others will want to host a session, and maybe Ethan will have one on birds and what you've learned from birds and how they can help us, because